Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of DC's Titans, the penultimate episode of the season and the series. It was called Project Starfire. And as it starts, we find Starfire having some kind of weird vision while waiting for the results of some kind of search in the system at Star Labs that doesn't turn up any results, or at least it doesn't seem to. Dick sends Tim to Gotham to meet with someone who has information about Mother Mayhem, and it looks like he's given him his Robin suit in a case, but we don't get to see what's in the case immediately. Sebastian's very upset because his game was destroyed and because he doesn't have his powers anymore, which he blames on the Titans, but which Luther Boy says actually went away because his mother took them, and he suggests killing her to restore Sebastian's powers so that he and Sebastian can run the world, which he says immediately after telling Sebastian not to be angry towards the Titans because the Titans are his friends, which to me seems contradictory to the whole, hey, let's run the world thing. But anyway, Mother Mayhem, speaking of, is back with her sycophants in her little crazy cave, the temple, and back to her pre-burn form somehow, which I'm guessing has to do with magic. She says that Sebastian needs to have someone give him of their body in order to fulfill his journey, and suggests that one of her acolytes in particular take one for the team, as it were. And the acolyte says she's honored to have been chosen and reveals that she's never been with a man before, apparently. But it turns out that what Mayhem meant was give them of their body literally by giving up their heart, which she extracts from the acolyte with a chest punch and then crushes into a crystal. We then see that what was in the case was indeed the Robin costume, as Tim shows up as Robin to Gotham and starts to take the piss out of a couple of criminals on his way to meeting with the person that he's supposed to meet, or on his way to finding them. But when they start shooting at him, he finds himself in trouble, only to be rescued by the Red Hood, who of course is Jason Todd, the previous Robin. Raven and Gar have a catch-up chat in which he explains that he's torn between spending time in the Red and in the regular world, just before Dick asks them if they know where Corey is, because apparently he can't find her. Mother Mayhem visits Sebastian at LexCorp and gives him the crystal after forgiving him for burning her and then telling him to meet her at the temple that night. It turns out that before she went missing, Corey, aka Starfire, asked one of the Star Labs folks to track Luther Boy by looking for thermal signatures because of his heat vision. That gives those off, I guess, and didn't mention it to anyone because Starfire asked her not to. But I'm confused because why wouldn't they just assume he was at LexCorp? I don't understand. Anyway, Tim and Jason talk shop, and it's weird because I guess Jason's back to normal now after having been a homicidal maniac for a while, though he still seems to be like kind of a dick. Tim helps him with some code that he was working on in relation to trying to stop a group called Shimmer from pulling off heists, and Tim's help reveals the result of the code is the word kaleidoscope, which Jason then is able to make use of to call Barbara Gordon to let her in on the heist situation, that the next heist is going to be at a kaleidoscope warehouse or something, in exchange for his usual percentage, which is very interesting. Sebastian and Luther Boy have a chat about how Sebastian plans to get his powers back and not only accomplish his own goals, but also help Luther Boy with his. But Luther Boy tells him that his mother is just using him, which he doesn't believe. So Luther Boy then goes and grabs some guy at super speed and brings him into the room, saying that if Sebastian doesn't believe him, he can ask the guy. Starfire shows up at, I think, Cadmus to question the lady there, while Tim and Jason spar in order for Tim to improve his skills, which doesn't go well for him right away, though he does eventually start to rise to the challenge before Jason tells him since he's warmed up now, he should suit up and join Jason on his next task. The lady at Cadmus tells Starfire that she can't reach Luther Boy either, and that it would seem that he's teamed up with Sebastian. At which point, Dick and the others show up, telling Starfire that if she wants to stop the bad guy, she needs the help of her friends. Luther Boy forcefully interrogates the guy that he brought before Sebastian, and the guy confesses that Sebastian is going to be totally forsaken once Trigon comes into the world, which causes him to spit up the crystal that he'd been given and apparently swallowed earlier. I guess the reason Starfire is determined to go out on her own, according to her, is because she thinks that she's the singular solution to the issue. I think because of what she was told a couple of episodes ago by that lady who could read ancient Tamaranian. And she doesn't want to drag her friends into it. Gar uncovers the fact that Lex had developed some kind of weapon called Project Starfire that would replicate Starfire's blue light power. So they take all the information that Cadmus has on it and they go off to, I guess, confront Luther Boy and or Sebastian. When Tim goes down to the lobby of the building he was in with Jason to meet Jason, he finds Shimmer thugs there instead, waiting to kick his ass, which they're unable to do, despite almost being able to do it, because Tim prevails in the fight ultimately, which it turns out that Jason arranged so that Tim could learn by doing and not just by being trained in controlled environments, which he called coddling. Luther Boy tells Sebastian that the guy he just interrogated is full of Mother Mayhem's blood, which will give Sebastian his power back, which I thought the crystal was supposed to do, but I guess not. So Sebastian has to drink the guy's blood, which he does. Once he does it, it would seem that the guy he drank from is dead, which means that Luther Boy, the son of Superman, just killed a guy, which is disturbing. Tim heads back to Metropolis after not being able to find the person he was sent to find, and Jason gives him a motorcycle with which to make the trip before he calls someone on the phone and tells them that Tim will make a better Robin than he was. Dick and Starfire end up meeting with Luther Boy at Lex's lab, and he tells Dick that he regrets some of the things he did trying to solve the problem by himself, which he did because he wanted to prove to Lex and Superman and Dick that he could do it. And I wasn't sure he was being genuine as opposed to trying to rope Dick and the Titans into something. But he then goes on to follow the team into Lex's lab where they find the weapon, which, hey, it turns out is finished, but which needs a power source to become functional. Power in the form of Starfire's blue blast, meaning that Luther Boy couldn't have used it if he wanted to without Starfire. In the course of activating it, it almost melts down and blows up the world, I guess, as Starfire and Luther Boy try to contain the power that's rising within it. But Dick ends up having to pull the plug on the power in the building before it can get to 100%. So with the weapon at 98.6%, they just give it to Luther Boy because he's the only one who can get close enough to Sebastian. And I just found myself thinking, I really hope they're not doing something stupid here. Anyway, Sebastian arrives at the temple where his mother has brought the horn with Luther Boy in tow, at which point he attacks his mother, enabling Luther Boy to grab her staff and Sebastian to take back the horn, which he then uses to stab his mother after she tries to convince him that the Titans are using him. But having been stabbed, she dies, and all of her powers flow right into Sebastian, at which point Luther Boy, seemingly actually trying to take out the bad guy, throws the weapon right at Sebastian with no warning, and a big explosion goes off, which knocks Sebastian down, after which he comes right back up, wearing a new costume and able to fly, and able to zap Luther Boy with some type of energy weapon, which he immediately does. Apparently, the weapon not being at full power caused it not to do what Dick and everyone hoped it would do. With Luther Boy lying out cold with his eyes wide open and possibly dead on the floor, Sebastian then blows the horn. At that point, with Trigon seemingly on his way into the world, Starfire decides that the only way to end this is her way, and the episode ends. So, as episodes go, I thought this one was pretty good, if you look at it as a self-contained thing. I really liked the part with, Tim and Jason. I thought that was cool. The only thing about it is it's kind of like a MacGuffin, I think, because Tim never meets up with the guy that Dick sent, or girl or whatever that Dick sent him to meet in order to get info on Mother Mayhem. So it seemed like just a MacGuffin to get Tim and Jason in a room so they could go back and forth, I guess. And Tim could have his moment of, his first real fight, but have it not be part of the main story so that he's not fresh out of the gate when they have to fight Mother Mayhem right at the end. So I don't know. It seemed like a plot device more than anything else, but I did enjoy it. I thought it was well done. And the Tim Drake Robin costume looks awesome. Tim looks awesome as Robin. So I thought that was very cool. And, it was good to see Jason acting like a good guy instead of a bad guy, even though he was being a dick. A little bit of a dick. The guy who plays Sebastian does a really good job. He's a really good actor, at least in this part. So I enjoy watching him go through the motions that he goes through or go through the things that he goes through because the guy is a good actor. And it's compelling when he's, talking and doing what he does. But, I did have some issues with the episode because the way they had Luther Boy sort of turn back around to being good was way too rushed after, almost all of the season of being Luther Boy instead of Connor. And it made me think that he was faking it to lure them in to some kind of trap or that he could use them to his advantage. as opposed to actually going back to his normal self and wanting to help the team, as opposed to wanting to take out Sebastian himself or, pursue his own end. And the reason it came across that way is because it was so rushed, and you don't really see him have a light bulb moment in private where you get the sense that he's changed before he tells them that he's changed or back to his old self, kind of. So I thought it was a ruse, and that's because of the way they depicted it. So, and it turns out that it wasn't. At least that's how it looks by the end of the episode. So I count that as a negative because it was an accidental red herring that they didn't intend, and that's sloppy, So I didn't like that. But I thought the rest of it was good. It's too bad that it's too little, too late. There's literally one episode left, and then the series is over. And it would have been nice if they had made better episodes along the way, that were more like this one and better quality than the crappy episodes they've been making up to this point. I'm concerned about next week because we know they have to wrap it up, and they not only have to wrap up the Trigon Sebastian plot, but they have a couple of other loose ends to wrap up. Tim's boyfriend, whose name escapes me at the moment, is still in a coma or whatever, for one thing. But they've also got to have some wind down time after they defeat Trigon and Sebastian, because they can't just take the final battle all the way up to the end of the episode and then go, okay, we won. His dead body is still smoking and everything's safe now. And they can't just end the series that way. They have to have a few minutes of, things being back to normal and the Titans able to take a breather before the next thing, would come up in their lives if there were another season. So that takes at least, I think, 5 minutes out of the story that they have to do the story of defeating Trigon. So it's going to be super rushed. And like I said, they got to bring Bernard back, right? Bernard, that's the guy's name, the boyfriend. They've got to bring him back around unless they're going to kill him off, which, at this point they would only do to have Tim be pissed off for the final confrontation. So I don't know. And Gar, the whole thing with the red, like, I think they've got to spend a minute or two showing Gar deciding whether he's going to stay in the real world or go into the red or try to balance both. They've got to address that before the series ends. So they've got a lot of work to do besides resolving the main villain plot, and they've only got an hour for all of it. So I don't. I mean, I guess the end was kind of sprung on them. So, maybe that's the best we're going to get, is this sort of rushed ending where they rush not only the final villain conflict, but the wrapping up of everything else. I don't know. Maybe it won't be awful, but we'll see. It's a week, until we get to see it. But that's really it. I'm going to get out of here. I'll be back to give my recap and review of the series finale after it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.